Hello, and thank you for joining us for APQC's September KM webinar. I'm Lauren Trees. I lead the Knowledge Management Research Practice here at APQC. And today's webinar is Opportunities and Impact for Knowledge Sharing Amid COVID-19, presented by our speakers from Deloitte. So this is obviously a topic that we've been grappling with and trying to figure out from just about every angle for the last 6 months. But Deloitte has some really timely and unique insights on this based on both their human capital trends research and their experience inside the firm, since they have a very robust and mature KM program internally. So they're going to approach the topic both from a research angle and from their personal experience, and I think it's just going to be a great session. So before we get started, I wanted to just give a quick overview of the rules of engagement. This will be old hat for those of you who have joined our webinars before. Since we have a lot of you on the call, your lines will be muted to avoid any background noise, but we do want your questions and your comments. You can submit those by typing them in the Q&A panel as part of GoToWebinar, or by hitting the raise your hand button. And if you look at that purple arrow that points at the little hand, that's your raise your hand button. And if you click that, we may call on you to unmute your line so you can ask your question live later in the session. But do not hit that button if you do not want us to unmute you and you don't want to talk. And we will address as many questions as we can at the end, and you will receive a copy of the slides and recording from today's session as part of a follow-up email. So now I'm going to pass things over to our speakers today. First, we have Ido Namir, who is a Deloitte partner and Human Capital KM Center of Excellence leader. And we also have Amy Edwards, who is a Deloitte Associate Director and Knowledge Sharing Leader for Global Consulting, Performance, and Delivery Excellence. And Amy is also a longtime friend of the center and participant in our KM research and working groups. So without further ado, I'm going to let them tell you more about who they are and what they're going to share today.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, nice to meet you all. Thank you for inviting us. It's a great pleasure to be here. My name is Ido Namir, and I'm leading the Global Knowledge Management Center of Excellence. I'm based in Tel Aviv, as you can see in the previous slide. But we are serving our clients all over the world with the other member firms. And so it's quite a unique center of excellence, and I'll say a few words about it. But first, about myself. Knowledge management is what I've been doing for the last 20 years. I served in the Israeli Air Force, which is known for its knowledge management methods and practices, and its debriefing culture and reflection methods. It's a great greenhouse for knowledge management ideas and tools and technologies, and very interesting startups came from people that served there. And after I completed my military service, I started to work as knowledge manager in organizations from the client side, and then as a consultant. And then I've opened my boutique firm. It was a knowledge management consulting boutique firm focusing only on KM. And 5 years ago, Deloitte acquired my company, and since then I'm acting as the partner in charge of the Knowledge Management Center of Excellence. As you can see, we have here more than 100 practitioners. Some of them are here in Israel, others are in different locations in the US, in Europe, in India. And we've carried out so far more than 200 global projects. So we have a lot of great success stories and best practices to share with you. So feel free to ask questions, and that's why we are here for. And as you can see, we walk the talk ourselves. We've been a 7-time Most Admired Knowledge Enterprise in the Make contest, and we are twice a part of the KM World's 100 Companies That Matter, and so on. But Amy will be better to introduce what we are doing internally here in Deloitte for KM and why did we get all these recognitions and prizes. So Amy, if you can introduce yourself.
Absolutely, thank you. And Zakia is going to flip the slide to give you some more perspective on Deloitte. So with my background, you might notice that I'm coming to you from home. And I am sitting in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States, whereas Ido is in Tel Aviv in our Deloitte office. So we have a mix happening that represents everything happening in our world because of COVID-19. And I have been with Deloitte for 27 years. I have not always been doing knowledge management. I have done client service when I started, did project management office work in the telecommunications industry, and that's what pulled me into knowledge sharing because Deloitte was growing so fast, we were globalizing, and we needed to quite honestly share our experience beyond our borders and to connect people with research in this rapidly changing telecommunications industry. And it's been nothing but exciting since then. So for the past, I think it's been 6 years, I have had the pleasure to lead consulting's knowledge sharing program. And our knowledge services for Deloitte professionals, which is our internal program, is more than just what my experience shows, because Deloitte, we refer to our knowledge services as core knowledge services because it is a shared service, which means each of our geographies and our global businesses and our industries choose to invest in having an enterprise-wide knowledge sharing program. The benefits are some of the things you see on this slide, that we have one global knowledge sharing platform. We refer to it as the Knowledge Exchange, or KX for short. We have a tremendous investment in people as well as technology. And while there's only 20 people, maybe at any given time, thinking about consulting's priorities, but that will help the business grow from a knowledge sharing perspective, there are tons of resources that are actually caring about the online experience that our users have to connect with information, that are handling the content that we have to be super sensitive about because we protect our clients dearly in those relationships. Providing user assistance when people have a question and need to call in, and then working with other teams like IT when it comes to building our tools, or talent when we're looking at options for learning. So it's tremendous to have a very rich, robust set of specialists. And I would say that is why APQC has recognized the maturity of our program, along with what you see at the bottom of this slide, which really shows you the breadth of the pillars of our knowledge strategy. And that is, we are focused on continuously enhancing our technology. And as Ido is going to talk about, incorporating cognitive and cloud technologies. His team is actually working with core knowledge services right now on what we refer to as our next generation knowledge sharing platform. So it's a very exciting collaboration. But we're also equally invested in exchanging ideas and connecting people, because it's not just about technology. And that culture goes a long way to get people engaged in anything that we need to happen for knowledge sharing so that it has an impact on our business. And part of the people piece is actually having a consistent approach and really clear roles about how we make knowledge sharing happen within this shared service. So I'll be excited to share stories that also support what Ido is sharing with us from our human capital trends and his own knowledge management experience.
Great. And we'll try, as you will see during the presentation, to cover these two angles, to show you what we hear from our clients as a service provider, and then to show you what we are doing internally, and it will give you a very comprehensive understanding of the trends that we are going to talk about, and the methodologies and technologies that are influencing our current situation. So, first of all, I want to start with the Human Capital Trends Report. Deloitte issues every year the Trends Report, the Human Capital Trends Report. And this year, for the first time, if you can skip the slide, please. This year, for the first time, knowledge management appeared also as one of the trends. And it covered So knowledge management was one of the trends that were covered this year. And you will see in a minute very surprising statistics, very surprising numbers. And we were quite amazed to see them. They raise a lot of discussions and provoke discussions about the potential and about the limitations or the challenges. So we want to cover them today, but we want to look at the findings through the lenses of COVID-19, how COVID influenced these knowledge management trends. Again, the report was issued something like a couple of weeks before COVID-19 emerged. So it's very interesting to look at the statistics through the lenses of the COVID-19 pandemic. But we wanted a broader discussion. You will see that we don't want it to be a discussion just about the effect of COVID-19 on knowledge management trends and solutions and activities. We want it to be a broader discussion about the new normal or the future of work and how it affects knowledge management and what are the interactions between the two and what we see in the market today. So some of the insights will be focused on COVID-19, but I think that they are relevant also to future discussions about the future of work and the workplace and workforce and knowledge management. And basically, the knowledge management part in this in the trends report had something like 8 or 9 topics that it covered. We chose 2 that are relevant more than ever now because of the remote work and the social distancing and the other elements that we are experiencing due to the COVID-19. And we'll discuss those and others. But if you want to read the full report, Amy will share later on the link and how can you get there. So let's start. Click. I think that the most amazing, if you can skip slide, the most amazing statistics that we got from the report was the readiness gap. We've never seen in the years that the trends report is being published such an amazing readiness gap for one of the trends. 75% of the organizations said that knowledge management is critical to their success, is very important to their success in the next year or year and a half. Yet only 9% said we are ready and our KM strategy is supporting and fully ready for the challenges. And as I said, I've never seen such a big gap in the readiness assessment. And it raises a lot of questions, a lot of issues for discussion about the why and what are the reasons that organizations feel that they are not ready. And you will see in a minute also the effect of the machines and the AI, which is a big portion of the trends report this year, and the ability of organizations to utilize and leverage those capabilities as part of their KM strategy. And it was a very surprising slide on statistics for us, but it creates obviously a great opportunity for everyone in the knowledge management domain because of the readiness gap.
And so, as you said at the beginning, we're hopeful that this gap is actually going to be made smaller because of COVID, because it's hastened so many change behaviors by force of working differently, which is the other part of the exciting story for us, maybe the positive of what we're dealing with. Are you okay
Absolutely.
if we move on to the poll? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, let's do a poll and then. No, I wanted to say that you are absolutely right. We saw that the COVID-19 expedite concepts, adoption of concepts like remote work and hybrid workspace and also knowledge management. And we saw that organizations that we needed a year ago to convince and explain the importance of collaboration methods and social collaboration and knowledge management in general suddenly approach us because they understand that because of the social distancing and the COVID-19 influence, they need to have a strong KM strategy and a comprehensive strategy in place. So let's go to the poll, and we'll continue after.
Yeah. And so we thought we would dive a little deeper on how your organizations are creating and preserving knowledge by just asking, what is the focus of your knowledge management program? You can choose any one of the 5 options you see here, and then we'll share the results. While everyone is sharing that, and I know Lauren or Zakia will tell us if once we're ready to share what you have said, but I would offer for Deloitte, we're continuously adapting how we're focused on these 3 things, that we are focused on all of them. If I had to give you a percentage of where we're focused, that I would probably say about 60% of our efforts are focused on collecting materials and information and having that readily accessible for our professionals. You might imagine that being a professional services firm, we have a lot of experience. We need to have those credentials in order to have meaningful conversations with clients. We need to know information about our people. And then we also collect a lot of collateral that helps us in sharing thought leadership, as well as our documented ways of doing work for practitioners. So that's a big piece. But then there'd be about 30%, I would say, around collaboration for learning and new insights. And part of that is helping our professionals connect with other teams. We're often not the experts, but we have a very strong network with other teams and the professionals in the businesses and industries. So aiding that collaboration, as well as having approaches for them to facilitate communities or using collaborative tools. And then I'd leave that last 10% around digital assistance and automating. We are continuously looking for ways to automate. We actually do have a digital assistant who's actually going through a transformation itself right now. And that is something that we will increasingly do as we become smarter and better about the results that we get out of those. So we are definitely touching all 3 and just working on that mix as we go on our journey.
Amy, it looks like about 80% of people have voted, so I think we'll go ahead and show the results of the poll.
All right, great. So some of the above. So Ida, we do have a mix, which is great. It's not just all about repositories and documentation, but obviously that first option is stronger than all of the rest. And how kind of maybe interesting for me that your percentages, while might not be 60, 30, 10, there it's pretty close in terms of the focus areas of our audience today.
Yeah. So first of all, I'm happy to see all of the above. I haven't seen the exact number, but it looks like quite a lot of people decided to choose all of the above. So it looks like our audience are quite mature when it comes to knowledge management activities and perceptions, which is a good thing. If we can skip to the next slide, another interesting statistics that came from the trends report this year was, and it's related to the question that we've just asked, was about the definition of knowledge management. And you can see that 55% of the organizations still define KM as a simple documenting and disseminating of knowledge. And I think it was about the same in the poll that we just had. And it's interesting because 67% have yet incorporated AI into their knowledge management strategies. And I want to tie it now to what I said earlier. The AI and machine learning capabilities were a real game changer in the knowledge management domain. We saw, and it's more relevant now that people are working remotely, and we'll talk about it in a minute, but it's something that we saw also before, and we knew that will be an important part of the future of KM. The AI and the cognitive capabilities really dramatically changed the way we look at knowledge management and changed the way the employees are contributing knowledge and retrieving knowledge. I'll give you a couple of examples from a meeting that I had yesterday with a client. One of the main blockers for knowledge management adoption was always the frustration of tagging documents and manually classify them. And it really harmed the contribution of insights and knowledge, both explicit knowledge and tacit knowledge. It was always an adoption killer, the complexity of the contribution and the frustration. People saw it as a burden and really found it hard. And today, I can tell you that the client that I've mentioned, we've developed for him an auto-tagging tool, an auto-classification tool, which means basically you throw your document that you've just completed, your presentation, your email, whatever you want, into the Knowledge Hub, and the AI, the bot, basically tag the document and tag the knowledge item using the taxonomy, the predefined taxonomy, obviously, but you do need to define a rigor taxonomy, but then the bot can tag the knowledge item automatically. And now, to quote the client, he said it was a game changer because suddenly all the objections were removed. Suddenly employees had no reason not to share because they just needed to add in the email CC to the Knowledge Hub, and then the bot did everything behind the scenes, tagged it and classified it, and it's a real game changer. So that's one example. And the other one is about the personalization of the knowledge. And what we are doing today with our clients is creating a fully personalized experience for the client. There is an expectation from the users to feel as the knowledge management tool was developed just for them, specifically for them. They feel like it's fully personalized. And the way to do it is both in the presentation layer, in the layout, but more importantly, in the content. So while using, for example, the search engine, an R&D guy in Minnesota will get completely different results for the same query than a sales guy in Berlin. So the idea is that I'm fully customizing automatically using machine learning the set of results in the search engine or the content in the home page or any other push and pull mechanisms that we are using. We are fully personalizing them to the user that is now viewing it based on his characteristics, based on his role, his responsibilities, his tenure, his location, his past usage in the system. There are many ingredients in the algorithm that we can calculate, and we can then show the content that he needs when he needs it, just for him. And that was a real game changer in the adoption because we saw, since we are doing this kind of personalization, we see an increased adoption and engagement by the users. So these are two examples, both the auto-tagging and the personalized content that we use today in order to leverage the AI capabilities. And it's really a shame to build a CAM strategy with methodologies and technologies without integrating the machines into the human aspects of it.
Absolutely. And I think I'm keeping what you just said, as something new I'm going to use, which is tagging is an adoption killer. That really does summarize it. When you're doing the basics as opposed to the exciting part of sharing. We would also like to see what you all are doing with AI in your organization. So we do have a second poll just to get a sense of what's happening in your organizations. So select one that you see below. And I can also offer, while we wait for your responses and your thinking, some of Deloitte's internal stories with automation. We really have worked on the gamut. We do have a team that is focused on thinking about how technologies can aid the operations of our knowledge sharing program. We do basic things like being able to deal with a massive number of documents that need to be shared. If you think about when you're building a methodology or an approach, that you've taken a lot of inputs from across the practice, you've decided which ones are the best, made templates out of them, and then we share those in our knowledge sharing platform so that they can be found in a variety of ways, including through the official method. Well, having robotics that quite simply just moves things from one place, like Ido said, if you had an email with 20 attachments, or you had a team site with 100, and move those into your knowledge sharing system. That's one example. Similarly, when our consulting practice globally about 2 years ago reorganized internally, that meant we had to recategorize everything that existed in our knowledge sharing platform that we chose to keep when we changed. And so we needed cognitive technologies to, well, one, we needed automation to just fundamentally change the tagging, but we decided we're also going to invest in cognitive technologies to make it smarter, to see, could we actually get better tagging than what our junior professionals had done in initial tagging? And so we applied cognitive technologies to that. And I mentioned earlier how we do have a digital assistant. We also have some great search capabilities. They're getting a better understanding of when a person asks a question, what the right answer is, as opposed to giving them a wall of results in the search response. So those are just a few examples from Deloitte's investments.
So it looks like most people have voted, so I think we can go ahead and close the poll and show the results.
Not at all. So look at that, Ido, nearly 60%.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And that chatbots are first. That, I mean, would you say, Ido, that's a pretty advanced to say, you know, majority are doing chatbots, but fewer are doing auto tagging, which in my mind, I often think auto tagging may be simpler than a conversational interaction. But what are your perspectives on that in terms of the ranking of results and the number of organizations involved in each?
Well, first of all, it only emphasizes what we saw in the trends report, that most of the KM practitioners and most of the organizations are still not using AI as part of their KM solution. And as I said, we believe that the next few years would be the AI years in the knowledge management history. So we will see more and more AI and machine learning based solutions for the sake of knowledge sharing and knowledge collaboration and retrieval. Chatbots is a great example. I will say a few words about it later on when we'll talk about the COVID-19 influence, but it's a great place to start from, because we saw in the research that the younger generation, especially the Gen Zs and the millennials, prefer a conversational interface over the traditional search engine. They prefer to use NLP, natural language, use their own words in order to find an answer. And they don't want to review a 70 pages document. They want an answer to a question. So they want to ask, can I do that or not, and get an answer instead of reading the full manual or the full procedure. So chatbot is definitely an important ingredient in the future KM strategy. The predictive search, I'm a bit surprised. I thought it's more popular today or more common because I see it in many of the solutions that many of our clients already use it. But yeah, definitely it only emphasizes the potential out there.
Yeah, great. Thank you all for sharing. We appreciate your participation.
Okay, so let's jump to the next topic. And one of the trends that we saw also in the trend report is that there are two disruptors that influence the knowledge management domain these days. One is the super teams that we actually started to touch when we discussed the AI, because when we look at the term super teams, it's a combination or integration of employees and machines, the robots and the people. And I'm not talking about physical robots in the knowledge management perspective, because there are physical robots that are also being used. But in the context of knowledge management, for example, the auto-translation that we've talked about, a bot that can auto-translate documents immediately, is a good example of using bots as part of a team. So let's say that I have a team based in Shenzhen, China, true story, a team in Shenzhen, China, and a team in Israel, and a team in the US, and they all exchange documents, but some of the team members don't have fluent English, and they want to have on-the-fly translation of this correspondence. So we have another team member, which is the translator, the automatic translator that we are using as a part of the KM solution. So the idea of the super teams is to utilize all the capabilities that you have with your team members, but also add AI and cognitive capabilities using bots in order to improve and make the knowledge sharing and contribution and retrieval more effective. And the second disruptor is in the area of interaction between the training, the learning, and the knowledge management. We see that the traditional learning methods and learning tools, whether it's physical training in classrooms or e-learning, both of them became irrelevant or not relevant for the current need. By the way, obviously COVID-19 made it even stronger, the need, but we know that when people go to the traditional training, whether it's in a classroom or in e-learning, the minute they leave the classroom, they forget 30% of what they learn, and it will only get worse as time passes. And the understanding today is that people can't memorize all the knowledge about the products and services and procedures and competitors. It's really impossible to memorize all that knowledge, and there is a shift to more KM-based solutions that will allow the employee to find what he needs, when he needs it in real time, instead of trying to remember what he learned in the classroom. So the new way of learning, the learning in the flow of work, is something that KM is a place where KM is intertwined and interconnected to the KM is interconnected to the learning activities. So these are two aspects and elements that we saw that really emerged even before the COVID-19, but we see now in the new normal that the need to reinvent learning is even stronger, and create a super team that leverage the tacit knowledge and not only the explicit official training. So there is the formal training and the formal knowledge, the explicit knowledge, that will continue to be delivered in some training and learning methods, as we said, probably more in tending to on-the-job or learning in the flow of work. But we also understand that using the AI capabilities and the machine learning capabilities, we'll be able to assist the capture of the tacit knowledge, which is today, people say that it's even 70% of the organizational knowledge is still tacit. It's not officially articulated yet. And both of these elements we will see more and more of them in the upcoming years. Next slide, please. Okay. So we will now say a few words about the challenges and the opportunities that emerged. As I said, the COVID-19 is just a catalyst. It expedites those trends, but we are looking at it as part of the new normal, also in the days post-COVID, hopefully soon. And we want to see some of the challenges that we see that emerged as part of the COVID, and we think that can become also opportunities for knowledge managers. So let's jump to the next slide. Okay, so first of all, people had to, due to the social distancing, had to work remotely. Virtual work became part of the new normal. Now, it's not a new thing. People used to work remotely also before, but now we see some hybrid models where people in some cases are like me in the office, while my colleagues are now at home. And it brought a lot of challenges in terms of collaboration and communication, and there was a need to continue delivering, continue communicating, and continue managing the people. And if we, back to the previous slide, if we understand that most of the knowledge is still tacit, we need to find a way, like in this great quote by Eric Avolini, to reinvent the water cooler, because that's where real collaboration happens and real knowledge exchange happens. And we need to find ways to enable this knowledge sharing and effective collaboration and between the team members. It's both top-down, the proliferation of decisions and the news and the updates that we felt that was damaged during the pandemic. We saw that when we interviewed employees, we heard that they felt that they are disconnected. They don't know what they found it hard to know what are the latest updates and news, and that they thought that there is some communication challenges top down from the management to the field. The other thing that we saw is that there is a challenge for communicating horizontally with their colleagues, sharing and working on projects together, and mimicking or duplicating the physical workplace in the digital workplace. That was the challenge, starting from the easy things like a whiteboard that we can brainstorm and sketch ideas on, up to the more advanced capabilities like tasks management, because I can't approach my employee on the floor in the office and ask him what's the progress, where do we stand. I need a virtual way to keep track of the tasks that we are having, keep track of decision making, manage documents effectively. And one of the mistakes that we heard and saw in the market is that mainly IT managers, sorry for the IT managers in the crowd, they said, well, we've implemented a remote access tool, so we have remote work capabilities. But remote access is not remote work. The fact that I can access my repositories or my SharePoint site or my email doesn't mean that I'm supporting knowledge sharing environment, knowledge collaboration environment, and effective communication between the teams. There are many functionalities and capabilities that need to be implemented in order to mimic the physical workplace and give the employees all the capabilities that they need. So that was definitely a challenge that created a lot of opportunities, and knowledge managers were supposed to rise and find solutions that will support the challenges that are born from the remote social distancing and the remote work and the hybrid work place. And the reinvention of the water cooler could have been social collaboration tools. It could have been other routines that enable knowledge sharing between the employees, but not the Zoom meetings as we see it today are usually very effective way to carry out tasks. Like if you have a daily meeting where everyone reports on the progress in a project, that's ideal for a Zoom meeting. Each one reports what he did and what is the status, and it's not very different than, there is no disadvantage than doing it in a room one after the other in the report. But when we are doing a brainstorming that requires a lot of collaboration and thinking about a new product, about a new service, obviously Zoom is not as effective. So we need to think of other ways to enable this collaboration and communication between the team members. Before the webinar, we had a preliminary discussion and we talked about the zombies, which is like zombies, but by using Zoom, because people attend like 8, 9 Zoom meetings a day, and organizations need to understand that it's really harming the employee and the collaboration between the employees. and it's not the best way to. You can't have one suit that will fit all. You need to have different methods of sharing and working together based on the tasks, on the challenges. So different tasks will require different solutions, and that's something that we need to take care of. And we need to avoid introducing new platforms or systems. Most of the tools that you need are out there. We don't need to overwhelm them with new technologies. It's just customizing the existing tools that you have to support the new challenges and support the new requirements that the employees have.
I would
By the
totally
way,
agree.
feel free to stop me and
Yeah, just adding what we experienced in Deloitte, which I know you experienced too, like all of the rest of us, that really we saw a reemergence of excited activity around platforms that already existed. So, and it varied based on what you were doing with it. But as an example, we've had Yammer for years as our micro conversation platform. And all of a sudden, large teams we were not getting together for global meetings as leadership, or we were not bringing people together for training, but we wanted to remain or maintain a sense of connectedness on important topics that are not necessarily work. They are really just us as people. And so it was leader-led in that case, finding ways that we can collaborate and communicate in different ways. When you get closer to work that's being done, I would offer two things that have really changed, and we're finding ways to take full advantage of that, is that because we have technologies like Zoom with video, that people are willing to use it. So we're willing to see one another, and we're getting more comfortable with people saying, this is not the time for video for me, so I'm not on, and that's acceptable. But we're honest with one another, and we're using those technologies. And as an example of then pushing that a bit further, because we're getting used to being on video, I just recorded a video this morning that'll be used in a communication. So rather than writing a long email that we might have done because we couldn't get a videographer to me, or I wasn't willing to do something on my own because it was complicated, the technologies made it really easy for me to film myself on my own and send the link off to our communications professionals to get that done. And then equally, we're using more of the collaborative technologies, like the integration of team spaces. We like email, just like Ido said, that imaginary approach for us of writing an email, CCing a hub, it gets contributed and categorized, is an amazing opportunity because we're in email so much and sharing things. But equally, what we're seeing in this area of remote work is people are actually more excited about working in spaces similar to something like a Microsoft Teams, where you can really not only make changes together and not have to worry about what version are you working on, but you can comment and you can have a meeting and you can see one another and look at that document and work on it together, and it's so fully integrated. None of these technologies were new for us. It is really just helping us as individual professionals take full advantage of them. So I think it reasserts what you have said many times, Ido, that this has just really hastened a new way of working, what we have in the past called the future of work, that really it is here. And this is just one of the opportunities for us as KM professionals to enhance that experience for our people.
And it's not obvious, it's not easy for managers. Since February, we've been training many of our clients on how to manage a hybrid team, how to manage virtual work, because it's very different than managing a team that is there in the office with you. And we need to remember the catalyst was COVID, but the virtual work is here to stay. I just saw a research where 75% of the CFOs said that up to 20% of the roles will remain virtual and remote even after the COVID-19, just because they saw that it's more effective and it makes sense for them and for the employees. So, and I'm not talking about Twitter and others who decided completely to work remotely, but many organizations will remain in a hybrid work model even after COVID-19. So it's not just a ad hoc solution for now. It's something to consider also for the future. And we as knowledge managers have to find the ways to enable this collaboration while working remotely and train the managers on how to manage those hybrid teams. Next slide, please.
Anita, we just have a few more minutes before we might want to open for questions, so we can blow through our next opportunities.
Okay, so I'll do it
a little quicker.
Yeah, okay. So let's say a few words about the omni-channel knowledge flow. Basically, what we saw during the COVID-19, and all of you experienced it, is that people, since they couldn't go to branches or to shops or to physical locations, they use more and more omni-channels or alternative channels like the social media, the mobile apps, the contact centers, the websites, even chatbots, as we said earlier. And the knowledge management played a critical role here, because you can't share your knowledge with your clients before you manage it properly internally. So when a client will enter the website and ask about a specific product, you want to have a consistent experience. You want to make sure that in the website, in the call center, in the app, in the mobile phone, you will get the same answers for the same questions, and make sure that the knowledge is consistent. So the need for consistency and the need for exporting for self-service all the knowledge created a huge opportunity for knowledge managers, and a big challenge. We needed to make sure that our repositories, the single truth, is organized and in a way that can then be duplicated, or not duplicated, but presented in different channels with a different graphic user interface, but with the same content, to have the consistent experience for the users, for the clients, the customers. And that's also one of the places where knowledge management had to reinvent itself and invest a lot in. Next slide, please. Okay, so one of the interesting things that happened since March or April, we saw that the COVID-19 created a lot of M&A activities and a lot of M&A opportunities. We saw that Deloitte published a poll of 2,800 US companies saying that 70% of them said that they will continue with M&A and even increase or accelerate the deal activities. And knowledge management plays a critical role in M&A's activities. Before the M&A, in the pre-M&A phase, where we need to have a knowledge due diligence, the acquirer wants to understand what he buys in terms of knowledge. It's the most important asset. He wants to see whether the target is managing its knowledge properly, and whether he has knowledge silos or knowledge loss risks, and are there certain people that hold all the knowledge, and he will need to make sure that there is knowledge continuity in the process. So the KM knowledge managers played a critical role in this area by making a gap analysis and a risk assessment in terms of knowledge sharing and knowledge management in M&A activities, and then a mitigation plan also in those areas. And in the post M&A, to make sure that the knowledge flows from the acquirer to the target and back in an efficient way. I can tell you, we talked about chatbots earlier, so I want to share with you a story from a couple of weeks ago. We helped a pharma company that acquired another pharma company, but not in the business aspects of the business knowledge, but in the HR knowledge. They wanted to make sure that all the employees that joined the company from the target had a way to understand what are the rights, how do they reimburse expenses, where do they get their laptops, all the HR-related knowledge. So we created a chatbot where the employees could go and just use their own words, ask their question, and it really improved dramatically the onboarding process of the employees after the acquisition. So that's one example of how can knowledge managers assist there. Amy?
Yeah, I will offer that within Deloitte, for many of our member firms, the knowledge managers are part of the post-merger integration processes. So we're actually asking questions alongside others of the company we're acquiring around how do you share? How do you record your credentials? Because obviously companies that we are bringing in are also going to provide services. So we want to understand what other clients have they worked with? What are their methods or approaches that might be the ways that we're going to adapt as Deloitte? And so we set aside all those other critical teams like talent and IT, asking questions around how do we bring these new professionals in? We're also very careful to appreciate that we're a much bigger organization than most of the organizations that we acquire and integrate. And so we want to find adaptive ways that they can share and potentially use some of the same approaches that they have done as they merge into Deloitte, and also leverage these many broader and available resources that are now available to them to do their work. So it's been a great role for us. And Ido, if I could suggest, maybe we'll skip the next slide where we were going to talk about some explicit steps and let Lauren tell us if we've got some questions that we might want to explore.
Sure.
Absolutely. And we have several questions in queue, and I'm sure that more will come in as well. So we have 3 or 4 questions all around a similar theme. So I'm going to pose those first, which is really if you are maybe in a smaller organization, less than 1,000 people, something like that, and you don't have a long history of knowledge management, you know, how can you incorporate things like cognitive and AI if you don't have a big budget or a big sort of business case for that at this stage?
So first of all, I want to say what we are telling our clients always, it's not the amount of employees, but the amount of knowledge that you need to consider when you approach the knowledge management strategy. Because I can tell you that I've worked with startups that had 20 employees, but they understood that their most valuable asset is their knowledge. And if one day they want to be acquired by someone, they need to make sure that their knowledge is organized and managed properly. So it's not the amount of employees as much as the amount of knowledge. And the good news is that those solutions today are not very expensive. Looking at the chatbot that I've just talked about, the vendors out there, Microsoft or others, offer it for quite a low price, and usually it's in a SaaS model as a service, which means basically you per usage per employee. So it's not like buying a new ERP and replacing your old legacy system. It's not a huge project in terms of fees, and I can tell you, I'm not objective, but I can tell you that the numbers that we have show an amazing return on investment on knowledge management projects. We studied it and conducted many researches about it, and the return on investment on such activities is usually very, very high.
And I would also just add to that, to the question for any professionals is also that while we recognize it as valuable from a knowledge sharing perspective, focus on that chatbot, which was a question here, that investment in technology on the business need. So you're likely going to partner with someone that is struggling with something. Ido's example of the M&A example, acquiring a new company, we know they have lots of questions, and so that's why you build the chatbot, so they can ask that question and get the answer. And I think that's really key in it, is that it's not KM for KM's sake. It is, here's the problem we're solving. So regardless of size, this is a better solution than what we might be able to do without these technologies.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. I think this flows really well into the next cluster of questions, which is about legacy systems. And I don't know which of you would like to speak to this, but just if you have a lot of maybe legacy systems or older technology, how difficult it is to integrate this in, or how that might impact the decisions you make or the results that you get.
You want to comment on that, Amy?
Well, I'll comment on it from a slightly different angle, in that Deloitte has many systems, and they're not necessarily legacy in the sense that they're very active. We have geographies, we have global operations, and so integrating systems is key. We do that in two ways. One is getting information from those systems, which might be legacy, but that's valuable business information to drive what work is happening out there and who might we need to ask about sharing because they have experience or their project is doing work. And then there's the other piece that I think is really a huge opportunity for us, which is given we have an enterprise knowledge sharing system, we still have lots of other ways that users get at this information. So to Ido's point about omni-channel, that our knowledge management system might not always be the right interface for someone, but it should be the authoritative place where it's protected, it's organized, and it could be available to other systems. And that is something that we are continuously working on. Our search is a great example where we have lots of systems send a standard set of data so that can be findable in one location. People don't have to remember all these places to go. And that opportunity, as I mentioned, is really making sure that beyond search in this one place, our enterprise platform and intranets, that it could also show up in other applications easily. And Ido has done that for us in some of our organizations where as you're developing a proposal, you're seeing content that has been shared in the knowledge exchange, so you can reference those things as you're building the content and sharing with other people.
Exactly, and I want to give you an example from an automotive company that we are working with. And what we've done there is when the R&D guy is starting to work on a new project, just by entering a few words in the description of the project, the system starts to promote content that he should read. It will tell him someone already worked on something similar, so you need to read this and you need to read that. And also you should contact John and Jeff because they were in teams that are related to that topic. So the proactive approach to the knowledge push to the user is something that you would want to consider when integrating content from multiple repositories and aggregating content from those repositories. I can tell you a tip that a prerequisite should be a rigor taxonomy. You need to have a rigor taxonomy in place. Otherwise, it would be very hard to aggregate content from different repositories in the right context and with high precision rates and recall rates. So you can't go to the integration phase or the aggregation phase before you establish the rigor taxonomy, a robust one that covers all the knowledge domains.
Such a great point. That's so foundational to how we're integrating our systems and content within Deloitte.
So we had a follow-up question to the omni-channel conversation around whether preparing content for that omni-channel delivery has affected how you create content internally or how you ask people to contribute content. But the format of it, I think, is the context for that.
So that really depends on the industry and the type of the organization. I can tell you that in the pharma domain, in the pharma industry, before publishing anything to the public, they need to go through a set of approvals, regulatory approvals, compliance approvals. So the workflow was changed. So we needed to make sure that it's not automatically from the organizational knowledge hub or the portal to the external website. It needed to go through a set of approvals before it was published. But again, that's exactly where the bots can help us to identify who is the right person that needs to sign it and who's the right person to approve it. And there are great ways. By the way, the example that I'm thinking of in the pharma industry use the Flow, Microsoft Flow, if you know it, for the process. And so the tools are there. You just need to have the right processes and governance model in place.
Great. And we've had several comments come in. One is, thank you for bringing the focus back on the North Star of business need, and lots of thanks for a great presentation. I think we've just got about 30 seconds left. So I just want to thank you guys both so much for presenting today. We have some more questions that we haven't gotten to, so hopefully we can follow up with folks and get those questions answered, which we usually try to do. But I think we will have to leave it there for today. Thank you, Ido, and thank you, Amy, for a fantastic call. And I look forward to seeing all of you next month, hopefully.
Happy to be here. Thank you all for
Thank you
participating.
very much for it.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. And if you have follow-up questions, please Google us and I'll be happy to support and assist. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.